It's a weird feeling, hearing your own mother laugh at you when she thinks you're not listening. Not just laugh, mock. I was sitting right there at the table, eating dinner with my family, while my brother streamed the whole thing online, like it was some kind of reality show. I didn't know he'd left the stream running. I didn't know they kept talking after I stepped out to take a call. And I definitely didn't know that the people I had supported for years, financially, emotionally, were making jokes about my life behind my back. Watching that video later felt like standing in the middle of a burning house and realizing everyone inside lit the match. That moment broke something in me, not in a dramatic, screaming kind of way. It was quiet. A quiet click in my brain said, "Enough. For most of my life I've been the one who tries, who forgives, who sends money, who answers calls at midnight, who shows up." And in that moment I realized they never saw any of it. Or worse, they saw it and just didn't care. What made it worse was the tone in their voices, like I was a joke to them, a walking punchline with a silly little career and big emotions. That's when I cut the cord. I stopped the payments, I stopped responding, and for the first time in 31 years, I walked away. Not in anger, not even in sadness, just clarity, the kind you can't unsee once it hits you. This isn't a story about revenge, it's about realization, about finally seeing the truth for what it is, and choosing to stop pretending it didn't hurt. I grew up in Austin, Texas, in a house where silence spoke louder than words. My family wasn't the shouting type. They didn't need to be. Disapproval came in looks, in shrugged shoulders, in the way conversations would just move on when I spoke. My younger brother Jake, he was the golden child, always knew what he wanted, or at least knew what my parents wanted from him. He followed the roadmap, business degree, corporate job, eventual family on the way. You know the type. They bragged about him at barbecues and told neighbors how proud they were. Me, I was the one they had to explain. I was the creative one. That's how they said it, with a little smile that didn't reach their eyes. I took a different route. Went into graphic design, freelanced, built my own business from the ground up. I made good money, more than they ever knew. But because I didn't clock in somewhere with a name tag and a 401k, they never saw it as real work. I could feel it every time I came home. The questions weren't curious, they were condescending. "So, are you still doing your little art thing? Or must be nice to sleep in every day?" It didn't matter how many clients I had or how much I was making. In their eyes, it wasn't serious. It wasn't respectable. I became background noise to their success story. The one they forgot to mention unless someone asked. But I still showed up, I still called. I still paid for things when they needed help. New tires for my dad's truck, groceries when things got tight, even helped Jake with rent once. I told myself it was just family. You give because you care. But deep down, I think I was hoping for something else. Maybe respect, maybe just a simple thanks. But it never came. Instead, I got sarcasm, guilt trips, and subtle jabs disguised as humor. They never asked how I was doing. Never once said they were proud. I was useful, and that was it. And I swallowed it over and over, thinking maybe one day they'd see me. Really see me. That part of me never stopped trying until the night of that video. It started small. Little moments I brushed off. Like when I landed my first big client and told my mom. Her response, "That's nice, are they going to pay you in exposure?" She laughed, but I wasn't laughing. Or when I offered to design a logo for Jake's side project and he said, "Nah, I want it to look professional." Stuff like that adds up. But back then, I didn't push back. I kept telling myself it didn't matter. I had my own life, my own wins. What did it matter if they didn't understand it? But it did matter because the pattern never stopped. They leaned on me constantly. If my dad's truck broke down, he'd call me. If the fridge needed replacing, guess who paid for it? I kept thinking they'd see me differently if I kept helping. Like maybe being useful would earn me a seat at the table. Maybe if I just gave enough, they'd stop treating me like I was a disappointment. And it's not like they ever asked nicely. It was always some backhanded way of saying they needed help. My mum would joke about how Jake's job pays in respect but not in cash, then casually mention the overdue electric. Bill. My dad would call and pretend to ask how I was, then spend 20 minutes talking about all the things going wrong in the house. I was supposed to connect the dots, and I did, every time. And even when I said yes, there was always a little jab waiting for me. You artists are good with imagination. Just imagine we'll pay you back. Ha! Hilarious. The worst part? I let it slide. I told myself they were just old-fashioned, that this was their weird way of caring, but it wasn't. It was dependence dressed up as love. I started noticing how my wins were invisible, but my wallet never was. They didn't celebrate my milestones, but they remembered my Venmo. I became the fallback, the financial buffer, and I didn't even realize how deep I was in until I looked at my bank history one night and realized just how much I'd been sending home. Month after month, year after year. Not because I had to, but because I thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally say, "We're proud of you." It happened on a random Tuesday night. I wasn't looking for anything, just scrolling through social media to unwind after work. That's when I saw it. Jake had gone live a few days earlier during one of our family dinners. I remembered the dinner. It was uneventful, or at least, that's what I thought. We'd eaten, talked a little, and I left early. But the video was still up, and something about it made me click. At first it was just background noise, then I heard my name. My mum was laughing. "Can you believe he still calls that a career?" she said. My dad chimed in. 31 years old and still thinks he's going to be the next Picasso. They all laughed. Even Jake, who was filming. He was holding the phone the whole time, making comments to the chat, jokes at my expense. "Guess freelancing means never growing up," he said. I watched myself on screen, smiling, nodding, totally unaware. I had no idea what was being said just moments after I walked out to grab something from the car. What got me wasn't just what they said. It was how casual it was, like it was normal, like making fun of me was just what they did when I wasn't. In the room, no hesitation, no shame, just open mockery, live-streamed for strangers to watch. Not a single person stopped it, not my cousins, not my aunts, no one. I wasn't just the outsider, I was entertainment. I kept replaying it, hoping I misheard something, that it would somehow sound different the next time, but it never did. The laughs were still there. The jabs hit just as hard. It wasn't even clever, just mean, cold and mean. I felt stupid. Not just for watching, but for everything that came before it. For every time I told myself they cared in their own way. For every dollar I sent, every visit I made out of guilt. I sat there with my laptop, frozen. It was like the mask had finally slipped, and I could see all of it. The years of subtle digs, the fake concern, the manipulation. All laid out in one 10-minute live stream. That's when something inside me shifted. For the first time I wasn't sad. I was done. I couldn't stop thinking about that video. It kept replaying in my head. Their voices, the laughter, the way they said things like they'd been thinking it for years. And maybe they had. I stayed up that night watching it again. Not because I needed confirmation. I knew what I heard. But part of me was still trying to rationalize it. Maybe they were just joking, maybe they didn't mean it. But no matter how I spun it, it didn't change what it was. They weren't venting. They weren't teasing. They were mocking. And the worst part? It wasn't even new. This wasn't some one-time moment where they slipped up. This was just the first time I caught them saying it out loud. The realization hit hard. I had spent years believing that if I just gave a little more, tried a little harder, they'd come around, that if I was useful enough, they'd respect me. But they didn't want me, not the real me. They wanted the version they could control, the one who paid for things and stayed quiet, the one who didn't challenge their worldview. I started, thinking back to all the moments I'd overlooked, all the comments, the little humiliations I had convinced myself were no big deal. And I realized I'd been gaslighting myself. I'd been editing my own memories just to keep believing that maybe deep down they loved me in their own way. But love doesn't look like that. It doesn't feel like shame. It doesn't humiliate you behind your back. That night I opened a notebook and made a list. I wrote down every single time they made me feel small. Every moment they chose Jake over me. Every time they called me ungrateful for setting boundaries. It was a long list, too long. And when I finished writing, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. For the first time, I could see the pattern. This wasn't about one live stream. This was about a lifetime of being the expendable one, the one they thought would never leave. And in that moment, something shifted. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't sad. I knew exactly what I had to do, and this time I wasn't waiting for their permission. The next day, I called my mum. I didn't lead with anger. I didn't even tell her I'd seen the video at first. I just asked her a simple question. Do you really think my work isn't real? There was a pause. That kind of pause where someone's trying to figure out what you already know. And then she laughed. Not hard. Just enough to dismiss the question. Oh, come on, Alex, she said. You know we joke around. You're being too sensitive. That line. Too sensitive. I'd heard it all my life. It was her shield. Every time she said something cruel, it was just a joke. And if I reacted, I was the problem. But this time I didn't let it slide. I told her I'd seen the video, that I heard everything, every insult, every laugh. I told her it wasn't just a joke, it was disrespect. She went quiet for a moment, then shifted tactics. We've always supported you, Alex. We love you. You're just reading too much into things. But I didn't let her spin it. I asked her straight up, what exactly have you supported? She stumbled. We've always been here for you. I told her that wasn't true. Being physically present at holidays doesn't count as support. Mocking my work and then taking my money isn't love. It's manipulation. She started crying. She said I was being cruel, that I was throwing away family over a misunderstanding. But I stayed calm. I told her I wasn't cutting anyone off. I was just done being the family punching bag. I told her I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. That hurt her more than yelling ever could. She tried one more time. We're your family, Alex. That has to count for something. And I said it did. For 31 years it counted for everything. And you spent those years showing me exactly how much that meant to you. That was the last time we spoke on the phone. I hung up feeling shaky, but free. No more pretending, no more explaining myself to people who chose not to understand. I didn't need their approval. I needed peace. And I'd just taken the first real step toward it. After the call with my mum, I knew I had to talk to my dad. And I already knew how it would go. With him, there were no tears, no guilt trips. Just deflection and ego. I called him that same night. No small talk. I said, I saw the live stream. He didn't even pretend to be confused. He just sighed and said, you're really making a big deal out of nothing. I asked him if he thought it was funny. It was a joke, he said. You take everything so personally. Same line, different parent. I asked him if he respected what I do for a living. And he said, it's not about respect, it's just not real work. You don't get it. I've worked with my hands my whole life. You sit behind a screen, it's different. That was it, right there, the core of it all. He didn't just think I was different and he thought I was lesser, and yet he never had a problem cashing the checks. I told him that. You've never respected what I do, but you've taken every dollar without hesitation. He got defensive fast. You think you're better than us now? Because you moved to Austin and play around on a computer. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't argue. I just said, I think I finally understand where I stand, and I'm done trying to prove anything to you. He scoffed. So what? You're cutting us off? Walking away like a spoiled kid? I said, no, I'm walking away like a grown man who's tired of being disrespected. Silence. For once, he didn't have a comeback, just breathing on the other end. And then the only thing he could say was, you'll regret this. I said, maybe, but I'll regret staying more. And then I hung up. My hands were shaking. Again, but it felt different this time. Less like fear, more like release. For so long I had tried to make him proud, to show him that my way of living had value, but he never wanted to see it. He just wanted someone to control. And I wasn't that kid anymore. That call was the end of something, and the start of something else, something I didn't have a name for yet. But I knew it felt a lot like freedom. A few days passed. I hadn't reached out, hadn't answered any messages. I thought maybe they'd let it go, let me go. But then they showed up, all three of them, my mom, my dad, and Jake. unannounced. At my apartment. I opened the door and felt my stomach drop. My mom tried to smile. My dad stood there with his arms crossed. Jake looked like he didn't even want to be there. "Can we come in?" she asked. I didn't move. "Say what you came to say," I told them. That's when it started, the full-on gaslighting campaign. "We didn't mean anything by it," Jake said. "It was just jokes. You're taking it way too seriously." My dad jumped in. "You're overreacting. Families mess around. You're not perfect either." And my mom, she went straight to guilt. "We're a family, Alex. We've always been there for you. You're just going through something right now." That's when I snapped. Not loud, not aggressive, just done. I told them they weren't there for me. Not when I was building my business, not when I was broke and trying to figure things out. Not when I needed someone to believe in me. They were only there when they needed something. And I gave it every time. I listed it all. The money, the late-night phone calls, the emotional labor. And I asked them, what did I ever get in return? No one answered. I looked at Jake and said, "You laughed the hardest. You've been leeching off me for years, and you know it." His face changed. He looked down like a kid caught in a lie. I turned to my mom. "You used me, then made me feel guilty when I pulled away?" And to my dad. "You mocked me and took my money like it was owed." They all stood there silent. For the first time, they had nothing to say. I said, "You didn't come here to fix anything. You came here to pull me back in." And I told them it wasn't going to work. Not this time. "You made your feelings about me clear in that video. Now I'm just finally listening." Then I closed the door. Just as I was about to close the door, my dad stepped forward. His voice dropped. "And no more jokes, no more pretending. You'll regret this," he said. "Family is all you've got in this world." I looked at him and didn't feel fear, not anger either, just a kind of finality. I said, "No, family is supposed to be the people who don't laugh when you're not in the room, who don't use you and then shame you for leaving. Whatever this is, it's not family." He stared at me, like he didn't recognize the person standing in front of him. Maybe he didn't, because I wasn't playing my role anymore. I wasn't the provider, the fixer, the silent one. I was done. My mom muttered something about how I was choosing to be alone. Jake just looked down again. I told them one last time, clearly and calmly, "Don't ever come here again." Then I closed the door. This time, it felt different. It felt like the last word in a conversation that had dragged on for decades. I locked it. Not just the door, the whole chapter. After they left, the silence in my apartment felt different. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for the next sarcastic comment, the next guilt trip, the next favor disguised as family bonding. I sat on the couch and just breathed. No calls, no texts. I didn't even check social media. I just needed quiet. Over the next few days, I blocked numbers, deleted threads, set filters on my email. I told the mutual relatives I was done explaining myself. I didn't want messages passed back and forth like we were in some kind of soap opera. I didn't owe anyone a performance anymore. I kept expecting to feel guilt, regret, some kind of hole. But it never came. What came was sleep. Real, deep sleep. I hadn't even realized how long it had been since I felt safe in my own space. Free from the weight of constantly being someone else's emotional and financial crutch. Don't get me wrong. There were moments I questioned myself, little flashes of doubt. Was I too harsh? Was it really that bad? And then I'd remember the video, the way they laughed, the way no one flinched. That's what kept me grounded. It wasn't about one fight, it was about a lifetime, a system, a pattern that only broke when I did something different. Walking away wasn't easy. It wasn't clean, but it was necessary. I don't know if they'll ever really understand why I left. And honestly, that's no longer my problem. I used to think family meant obligation. That blood demanded loyalty no matter the cost. But I've learned something else. Family is who respects you when you're not around. Who shows up without conditions. Who sees you for who you are and says, "You're enough. Maybe I don't have that in them, but I can build it somewhere else." With people who choose me, not because they need something, but because they care. I used to chase love from people who only loved me when it was convenient. Not anymore. Now I chase peace, and if that makes me the villain in their story, I'm okay with that, because in mine, I'm finally free.